Quant Pop-Up wants us to highlight this, and if anything, let's blow this up a little bit so you can see it better. Research and white papers. So many people don't take the time to actually read white papers, but they do matter. Multi-party cross-chain asset transfers. Mentions some of these specific things about the mechanisms, but the first thing of concern for you should be, plain as day, SATP. Because we know about Quant and SATP. Basically, you should look at SATP as basically being Quant. So what you see here, it says also, contrary to existing legacy systems, there's little standardization for cross-chain communication. Here we present MPSATP. Think about that. Multi-party is what that stands for. A resilient multi-party asset transfer protocol built on top of secure asset transfer protocol. I mean, at the end of the day, before we get further into it, back to you, brother, because at the end of the day, you always say, how do you say quant without saying quant? What would be built on top? I think this is a good update. We'll get more into the weeds, but again, just off of that, Channing, I mean, the way I look at it is the writing is on the wall. The terminology is literally there. Some of your thoughts.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. It's just a few taps. You can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.
Absolutely. I mean, because we know what Overledger does. Overledger is bringing that interoperability. It is that connection that is bringing all of the systems into the same time zone so that they can do these interoperable swaps, interoperable, secure asset transfer protocols. So absolutely, like, people just don't understand truly what QNT is pulling off globally. They may not say a lot of hype, or it may not be this huge marketing push, or it may not be, the loudest thing in the room, but they're the most powerful because bosses move in silence, brother. Go ahead. I kick it back over to you.
Yeah, they do move in silence. There's a lot of things about NDAs and so on. Getting more into this and why it matters, I want to point out some of these other key things. So, like it says, furthermore, we enhance SATP's crash recovery mechanism that directly influences the reliability and performance of our solution. Using multi-party SATP, we show how to perform end-to-end resilient asset transfers in permission environments by decoupling them into multiple one-to-one asset transfers. All right. The other point I want to get into, or part, I should say, is enterprise-grade environments, such as supply chain management systems, can immediately leverage our solution to perform atomic multi-party asset transfers, as shown by our use case. Now, if you've never seen another video, again, check it out. I'll put a card up to it. You could jump into that, and you can jump back to this, but it's up to you. You can continue with this if you choose to do so. Again, when we talk about enterprise grade and leveraging it, think about Overledger, okay? So, again, this is BlockDaemon, but we did confirm BlockDaemon, of course, to the BSN. That was a big discovery. The other part I want to get into is, again, a little bit about this. So, Quant Pop, of course, highlighted this. We kind of already went over this. But again, constant messages about multi-party and, of course, SATP. The other part I want to jump into is basically elaborating furthermore from the actual PDF. This is from start.blockdaemon.com. And in this 10-page PDF, it's what is referenced here. Resilient gateway-based end-to-end cross-chain asset transfers. You have key participants in this. Obviously, we know that Thomas Harjana has done a lot of work with the Quant network, especially from his role with MIT and his connection, obviously, to the Internet Engineering Task Force. Those are the pioneers of the Internet. In the findings, you will see literally 153 mentions of SATP. So for one, I want to talk about this for a brief moment, and it's this part. It says using SATP, as in multi-party SATP, we show how to perform end-to-end resilient asset transfers. Again, that one-to-one asset transfers. Is it one-to-one, for example, with combining stable coins? Is it one-to-one on some of these other things that we studied? Could very well be, but they do reference some things that Gilbert talks about, and that is this: how blockchain can be defined as an immutable distributed ledger composed of a sequence of blocks that are, of course, cryptographically dependent on one another through cryptographic hash functions, I should say. Well, in reality, constant references to the underlying tech. Well, Quant and their rule with CBDCs, does it cite any of that? The answer is yes. They point out here on the other side of the page the whole thing of permission blockchains, typically the ones that operate with decreased decentralization and employ consensus mechanisms that offer instant finality. We also know that with Overledger, through a particular demo, you can switch quickly from Quant with QNT to anything like your Ripple XRP. Why would you want to do that? Draw your own conclusion. We're going to play that brief little demo here in a bit. And if anything, we're going to jump right back. All right, welcome back. With that said, these radically change the underlying trust assumptions. So as you saw in the demo, jumping from Quant to Ripple XRP. And of course, I shared that before in the past, but there's a whole new wave of you guys, and I wanted to point that out to you. This part, delivery versus payment, DVP, or central bank digital currencies, are built upon permission networks. Think about Quant's rule. This highlights the importance of addressing, of course, interoperability challenges in this context. The other parts I want to get into is further down here. Excuse me. I'm going to have to go down to, I believe it's page 3. It says, in response to identify gaps in the literature, we present a novel solution called MPSATP. It stands for Multi-Party Secure Asset Transfer Protocol. It's specifically designed for permission networks, facilitates the transfer of multiple assets among N parties. All right, think about all those particular assets. Back to what Jesse of Apex Crypto Consulting was talking about. Finally, moving forward with the internet being tokenized, not just real world assets, the entire internet. Look what it says here. MPSATP operates as a gateway-based protocol. Well, what would be part of that mix? Isn't Overledger a gateway-based protocol? Answer is basically yes. And before we kick it back over to Channing, I want you guys to pay attention to this. They address what is a critical requirement in the current landscape where interoperability solutions are tailored for specific ledgers or use cases. Who does that better than anybody? Quant. Quant leverages all technologies and all of their existing ledgers, hence Overledger. And this next part. To the best of our knowledge, MPSATP represents the first multi-party blockchain interoperability solution dedicated to asset transfers between permission networks while also focusing on cross-chain standardization. To the T, by definition, ladies and gentlemen, that is Quant. At the end of the day, our brother Channing is famous now at this particular point in my book, in my mind, for saying this, and it should be merch, my friend. You should make merch out of this that says, how do you say Quant without saying Quant? Go ahead and take it away. Your thoughts based off of the presented material. I think this is big, especially with solidifying, once again, the whole key connection to China, BlockDaemon, and of course, what we showed in the other video. By all means, everybody, check it out. The connection to BSN. People say it's speculative, but we did bring the receipts in that particular video. Channing. Hold on, brother, you're muted.
Yes, brother. How do you say Quant without saying Quant? Oh, just describe everything that Overledger is and then some. You have to remember that, we put a really big focus on like the Genius Act and tokenization of money and stable coins and things of that nature. But you have to remember the stock market is being tokenized. The commodities market is being tokenized. The real estate market is being tokenized. The art market is being tokenized. All of these things. So these multi chain multi-asset swaps, they're going to become more and more common as these processes roll out based off of the regulation that is being laid in these countries. Just like the video that I did about the Qatar Economic Forum, and the I believe it was the CEO of the Qatar Economic Center, and that's what he said. He says the utility tokens, the security tokens, these are, and what do you think a security token is? It is a security that already sits in their system that has been pulled onto a blockchain that now has a digital representation of that security now being swapped. You know, all of these things will play a huge part in the build out of Web3. They're literally moving the entire economy of countries, every facet of you can think of as far as an economy is concerned, whether it's your banking, whether it's your securities, so forth and so on, are being pulled onto the blockchain. And it's going to need some type of protocol that can literally seamlessly, safely interoperate and swap these things back and forth within a matter of seconds, like delivery versus payment. Right now we have delivery and it takes 3 days for payment to come through. What we're getting ready to go into a system where you literally have 3-second finality delivery versus payment as far as these processes, these, whether it's stable coins, whether it's tokenized securities, whether it's tokenized utility tokens, whatever the case may be. When this realm of Web3 gets up and operational fully based off of the regulation that is quickly being laid in all these jurisdictions, as you guys see with this news breaking, seems like every day now you have either a member of over here or the EU or the UK or even China or India, all talking about the same thing, regulating this place so that they can come into this space and start utilizing these services because they're faster and they're cheaper and they're more secure. And this is the reason why this is going to thrive. It's like a secure asset transfer protocol is going to be one of those main pieces to ensure that they can do these swaps either cross-border or within the same borders securely, so that they're not losing millions, billions, and at the end of the day, trillions of dollars doing these swaps. But I kick back over to you, brother.
I love the perspective that you always share, Channing, with our community. You know, everybody loves how you're able to take what's on, you know, the page and give your summary about that. So we do thank you for that. The other thing I want to jump into is some of the questions that some of you guys are wanting. A little bit more of that whole thing of China. Let's address that. So let's jump over to this. And the site you're about to see here is referred to as voanews.com. China's economy could overtake the United States economy by 2030. Could, but in reality, I don't think so. I don't think so at all, especially with this golden age, especially for the United States. And keep in mind, this is written in 2022. Again, we have a whole other SEC administration, to say the least, right? And of course, a whole new administration as of January 20th. Wherever the case be, I want to cite some of this. So, as we get into this, you have to keep in mind it's the terminology. And for a moment, I want you guys to realize, I should say, the whole concept of gross domestic product. So, even though these percentages may seem low, for a country's GDP to grow like that, that's actually really, really significant. For one, at the time of the writing, it says China's GDP should grow 5.7% per year through 2025 and then 4.7% annually until 2030. British Consultancy Center for Economics and Business Research, which is called CEBR, of course, had that forecast, but it forecasted that China at that time was the world's second largest economy. Could very well become number one, but the point is, Chinese leaders, at least then, pushed over the past decade to rely more on value-added services over traditional factory exports. State media, of course, said at the time. The Sino-U.S. trade dispute and early 2020 workplace closures due, of course, to the pandemic, of course, added pressure on manufacturing. Reduced factory output in China. Foreign multinationals have been expanding outside of China. We know about that. But they did target places like Vietnam to avoid rising wages, environmental compliance, so on and so forth. But this other part mentions offshoring in multiple countries. They hope to head off any repeat of China's early pandemic lockdowns and so on. They go on to mention this other part that during that time, the economy totaled 15.92 trillion, of course, back in 2020. But again, these estimates, okay, I do think it's a big deal. And again, the other part I want to jump into is that it mentions this thing about, for example, let me scroll down, excuse me, about the whole thing of China scoring 2.98 in 2018, up from 2.45 8 years earlier, approaching 3 times the world's average. So China wants to, at the end of the day, realize some form of tokenization. On the surface, it may not seem like it. But again, when we get into the patents of Quant, when we get into the whole thing of BlockDaemon, BSN, you can come to the conclusion that behind the scenes, clearly they're doing something. Literally, the terminology. Well, the terminology equals to this part, and it's the infrastructure. That part I want to highlight. It says right here, state intervention in the internet sector won't hobble expansion in semiconductors and infrastructure software. According to this guy, Zenon Kapran, who's the founder and director of Shanghai-based financial industry research from Campernasia, he says, if the country does become self-sufficient in terms of technology, then it's able to sell and export these products and services that are based on the technology. Then that would be a huge bump in its economy because the key driver certainly of the United States GDP. So at the end of the day, would the United States continue to grow? Would it also benefit, of course, China? Well, I think we already know the answer to that. And the answer to that is the whole concept of interoperability. So just a quick thing I wanted to share with you guys, maybe kind of went right past your head, and that's fine. But also keep in mind, this citation from McKinsey, they're one of the top consulting firms, I should say. They point out that domestic spending has driven most of China's economic growth before 2021, and basically, while that reduced its exposure to the world in the view of the Sino-U.S. trade dispute, at least at that time, McKinsey & Co. says it's China Consumer Report that points out that supply chains have, in fact, matured and localized, and its innovation capabilities were enhanced. Think about it. Innovation means infrastructure, means standards, and of course, if anything, where do we go from here? So would China overtake the U.S. economy? I'm going to disagree with that. We understand that it could very well happen, but I don't think in this particular day and age. But we can respect the whole idea of referencing things like this with SATP, referencing things like this in regard to BlockDaemon, and again, how it all comes together. Multi-party cross-chain asset transfers. Again, how many times do we see the SATP reference, and of course SATP with Quant? Literally, I don't have it primed and ready, but again, that picture of the SATP screenshot in the top right corner has the Quant logo, and this is why we point out some of these key things and why it matters to you guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. This is from my own research of this particular article that I wrote. So there you go. Look at this for a second, okay? So again, potential overlap. PayScript would compete with Swift. Kind of been there and done that. But what do you see here? You know how many times I mentioned boil it, mash it, stick it in stew? Here are people meeting, talking behind the scenes about the Secure Asset Transfer Protocol. Why in the world would you have SATP and the Quant logo in the top right? I'm just saying, this is why we point out the significance of this. If anything, Channing, in my opinion, this has always been the smoking gun to it all. So I want to get some of your closing thoughts about some of this, what we basically shared. Obviously, the whole thing with China, but I mean, come on. Plain as day, Quant logo, Secure Asset Transfer Protocol. Quant has always been there, and apparently they always will be, especially moving forward. What did we discuss, Channing? Something like that patent doesn't run out until 2038, something like that. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah. As far as the country's gross domestic product, it's always good to have a country that is growing. That means the country is thriving. That means the country does have a very future facing, future forward, outlook on it all. And will it overtake the US? I mean, who knows? But yeah, that's what I'll say about that. But as far as secure asset transfer protocol and Quant, long before any of the YouTubers were even talking about secure asset transfer protocol, it was already years ago on Quant Network's site, talking about their process, talking about what they're providing for the protocol, and them working with MIT and working with the Internet Engineering Task Force in regards to secure asset transfer protocol. So it's like anything that's coming out now, we're only seeing all of the private facing decisions that have already been made, and now they're just making their public announcements in regards to it. Something like a secure asset transfer protocol, which is a internet protocol, you guys. That means anyone tapping into the internet in the realm of sending things securely will be utilizing SATP. And it's not like they're going to be like, hey, let me go check a box and do SATP. No, they'll just be doing the regular standard way of sending these processes, these assets securely, the way that it's set up regulatory wise, and indirectly tapping into secure asset transfer protocol, which is indirectly tapping into Overledger, ensuring that this asset is being transferred interoperable, securely across borders, or whatever the case may be, depending on how that asset is being transferred. You guys, the writing is on the wall. The writing has been on the wall. Quant, again, like I said earlier, may not be the loudest project in Web3, but the moves they are making completely eclipses everyone else in Web3, and is based off of the partnerships they have cultivated, the standards that they have aligned themselves with, and the internet protocols they are providing critical infrastructure for. Like, second to none. Second to none. And China, alongside of India, alongside of Russia, alongside of the EU, alongside of the UK, alongside of Canada, alongside of the US, all of them are getting in alignment with this regulatory compliancy of Web3, so that they can now push it out into their economies, so that you and I will be utilizing this technology and these processes without even realizing it. But it's because it's keeping us safe, it's keeping us secure, it's keeping us future-proof and resilient. Everything that Overledger boasts itself to be, brother. I keep back over to you.
I want to have some real talk with you. I know a lot of times we zoom in on Channing. We're going to zoom in on both of us on this one. This is going to be good. And you guys don't normally see this from myself and Channing, but this is going to be a great conversation. Let's have a conversation, just briefly. So back to what Channing just talked about. He said Quant doesn't make a lot of noise. If anything, I want to put it in perspective for you guys. So for one, for me, for example, and Channing and I are roughly around the same age, so we could have went to school together, right? How cool is that? So my thing is this: I didn't recognize the internet till I was roughly, I think, a freshman in high school. I saw Windows 95. My freshman year was the 1995-96 school year. So I finally saw Windows 95 at the internet library. Like inside the library, there's a set of computers, and that's what I saw. That was my first ever exposure to the internet. For other people, it was way, way before that. Hey, awesome. But the bottom line is, for almost all of us, I would say 99 out of 100 of us, if you were to take a poll, when we talk about the noise, who made the noise? Google totally made the noise. Before Google, I remember using search engines like Yahoo. Yahoo made the noise. Ask Jeeves made the noise. But the bottom line has always been this, and I want you guys to think about this. Nobody talks about the noise that the Internet Engineering Task Force did. And if you think about that, that dates back to 1984, give or take. But when we look more into Quant, we know about the connections to the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. So they're connected to the pioneers of the internet. Now, keep in mind, Google made a lot of that noise. And yes, to Channing's credit and some other people, Hedera makes noise because Google's part of that governing council, right? I should say Google. Yeah, Google is part of that governing council for Hedera. Very impressive. Okay, but also keep in mind this. It's the foundation. Back then, IETF was the foundation for building the internet. We know that Quant, by their own slogan, is the foundation for building on blockchain, the foundation for digital finance. So all these things that are happening in the background for Quant to the general public is not making noise. What's the difference now moving forward compared to then? Channing, the answer now is back to what our brother Jesse was talking about. The internet of value, obviously your Ripple XRPs, your Stellar XLMs, the internet of trust. That trust layer is Quant. And moving forward, we also know to enter into this new web, we shouldn't just necessarily call it Web 3, this new web, we should realize that it's tokenization of the internet, not just real world assets. Finally, having a token or a coin like Ripple being represented moving forward. The internet has never been like you can't, we recently, I think it was yesterday, you guys will get the video later. Jesse and I talked about this, that you never had an example ever of how much the internet is truly worth. Like nobody can wrap their mind around that. But in reality, some countries could be worth over $50 trillion, right? So when you add up all this, then we do get into some of that big money. So again, Quant's not making noise to the mainstream, but in the background, they're making all the noise that matters.
Absolutely. They truly, truly, truly are. It's like almost like a silent atomic bomb that has already went off. And the public has no clue, but the enterprise, central banks, multinational corporations, governments, and commercial banks know it and have felt the ramifications of the side effects coming off of that bomb. What they have pulled off and continuing to pull off globally, like I say, is second to none. The foundation that they are providing, the critical infrastructure that they are literally laying, is for the banks to be able to do something like a stable coin. It's for the banks to do something like a tokenized deposit, which is something different. I have a video coming out about that as well, because people don't know tokenized deposits, stable coins, although they may seem like they are the same, they're not. One is yield bearing, one is not. One is from a bank, one is not. But anyway, I'll go into that later. Brother, I kick it back over to you.
All I got to say is, Channing always doing it big with his summaries, his perspective, and so on. If you're watching from my channel and you're not subscribed to Channing, what are you doing? Really? You need to go give this brother a follow. As you see on the lower left-hand side of his screen, his channel is at King Channing, not only on YouTube, but also on X. And of course, you guys are watching this on his channel as well. So that's good. But again, try to support those I'm networked with. I am networked with these guys for a reason, because I believe in their message. It's an alignment. But whatever the case be, so glad to be back with Channing. I know you guys have been missing him. So we're doing some of these particular collaborations and so on. But, we'll do some ones back with Jesse again too, which is cool. But hey, do us a solid if you listen to the entire outline. Here's your code word if you listen to the whole thing. And that is, you ready for it? Drum roll, please. It's seamlessly. And we'll know that you listen to the entire outline. On behalf of myself and King Channing, we have No Way You Hold It, the Research Trumps FUD, 110%. We'll see you on the next one.